Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1645A, and today's date is August 22nd, 2018, and the title of the episode is, The World is Now Preparing for the Economic Transition. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been tracking this economy for quite a while, and what we've noticed here is that the indicators, the economic indicators, they've been deteriorating quite rapidly. They've picked up since about last year or so, and things are starting to accelerate. Yes, the statistical numbers like GDP, unemployment, all the rest, where they can completely manipulate it, change the calculations, yeah, those are going to look fantastic. The stock market is going to look fantastic until the very last minute. Go back in time, think about every time we had a problem in the economy and the whole thing just came tumbling down. Everyone thought, this is the best economy ever. It's never going to fail. It's incredible. It's impossible. Housing prices are not going to come down. It's not going to crash. The stock market hitting 14,000 points. This was back in 2008. Why would this come down now? It makes no sense. Companies are very, very strong. The same thing is happening right now. But what we've been doing, we've been looking at all these different indicators, and we've been watching, we've been observing, and we are realizing that this system is about to implode on itself. And they're doing whatever they possibly can to convince everyone that everything is great. And there's a reason for it. There's a plan in place. And when we start to look at these economic indicators like housing is a very big one, because this is the middle class here. Their wealth is tied up in real estate. And when the middle class feel that real estate is not doing well, they contract. And once they contract, that means they're not going to spend money anymore. And this is exactly what is happening now. When the real estate market is doing well, a lot of people refinance or take out equity lines of credit, and they pull their funds out of the house because they're expecting the house prices to continually move up. But when this doesn't happen, guess what? This part of the spending dries up, and the younger generation, the next generation coming up, they don't have the jobs to support the housing market. They're not out there purchasing houses, especially with interest rates moving up right now. And this is completely evident when we look at new home sales, pending home sales, and we just received the information for existing home sales, and they are not doing well. We know back in June, we had really bad U.S. housing data. Everyone was hoping for a rebound in July, and it didn't come. Existing home sales tumbled 0.7% month on month. It was expected to go up by 0.4%. Way off. Now, this is the longest streak of declines since the taper tantrum in 2013. Single-family home sales fell by 0.2% month on month. It's down 1.2% year on year. Think about what is happening right now. We are in the summer months. This is when people purchase homes. They move in right before school. They try to get settled. It's warm weather. They want to move during warm weather. They want to get into the house before the kids go off to school. Guess what? It's not happening. The purchases of condominiums and co-op units dropped by 4.8% month on month. It's down 3.3% year on year. And housing prices, they are starting to come down. And what's very interesting, housing prices were moving up and up and up, and this is the inflating of the bubble. And now they're starting to come down a little bit. Why? Well, interest rates, they are moving up. People can't afford these homes, and the bubble is popping, not just here in the U.S., but around the world. We see the sentiment for home buying conditions are the worst since Lehman. And whenever we see this, whenever we see the UMich home buying conditions drop to the level that they are, guess what hits? A recession. And this is what is happening right now. The entire system is breaking apart, but this is the plan. The plan is not to have this economy continue on the way it is. The plan is to bring it down. But there's two different plans. There's a plan by the central bank and the deep state, and there's a plan by Trump and the Patriots. And these two plans are working right now. And eventually what's going to happen is one of these plans are going to be the winner. And we can see right now that Trump and the Patriots, they are pushing their plan to the extreme. And the Fed, they're kind of caught up in all this because they don't know what to do at this point. Because now Trump is calling out the Fed, saying, listen, look what you're doing with the interest rates. Look what's happening here. Now Trump is looking to bring the dollar lower. And we can see right now this is going to be a huge problem for the Fed. And eventually what's going to happen is the Fed is going to be taken over. Most likely it's going to be nationalized. And we see that there are countries out there, they know exactly what is going on. They understand that the dollar is not going to remain the reserve currency of the world forever. They know there's too much debt. They know that you need gold to build confidence in your country. They know they need to get rid of debt. They know they need to separate themselves from the entire system. Because when the system comes down, anyone that's tied to it, anyone that depends on it, well, they're going down with it. And we can see with Russia right now, they've bought about 839,000 ounces of gold in July. And their entire treasury holdings, that has dropped. Now, their gold holdings, they total around 76 billion. They dumped around 90 billion of U.S. treasuries in April and May. And what we're seeing here is that Russia is trying to detach from the U.S. dollar-based system. They created their own payment system. They trade with many other countries using their national currencies. They're moving away from the dollar. China's doing the same thing. There are many, Turkey is doing the same thing. Venezuela is doing the same thing. There's a lot of countries out there that are moving away from the dollar because they understand what is happening here. And China and Russia, they have been doing this for quite a while right now. They've been preparing their countries for this economic transition. We see Turkey is looking to join China's Belt and Road. Looks like they're making a deal with Qatar to have transactions bypassing the dollar. India has done the same, and we see many other countries, Syria, Iran, and the rest, they're all doing the same thing. And you think, oh, these are little just tiny countries in the Middle East. Yeah, but they have oil, and they want to do business with China. The African nations that have a huge deposit of many different resources, they want to do business with China. They're moving away from the dollar and using the yuan because they have more economic deals with China than they do with the U.S., and they want to use the yuan. They don't want to use the dollar. China is building the infrastructure for many of the African nations. And the U.S., well, they have been garrisoning the countries to force them into doing something they really don't want to do. And remember, many of the countries out there do not trust the United States because over many, many years, the United States, I'm talking about the deep state, I'm not talking about the people of the United States, have used force on these countries. Now, of course, the deep state and those people in power told us was for democracy, freedom, and everything else. No, it was for their system. It was for the central banking system. This is why we need to go into a country and take over and have regime change to keep their system in place. And a lot of countries, they don't trust the United States. Even with Trump as president, they still don't trust the U.S. because there's been many, 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 many years where they did things that these countries do not like. Sanctions, war, going into countries, having regime change, destroying their infrastructure. And many other countries are looking at this and saying, you know something? We know what's happening. We need to step away. And we're starting to see this all over the place. Why do you think Trump is out there making bilateral trade deals with all these countries? First of all, it's diversification. This way, this trade deal is not affected with this trade deal. And he's setting everything up right now, not just him alone. There's many other people behind the scenes here. Everything is being set up to allow the United States to bring back manufacturing. to become a great nation once again. And the only way to do this is to break down what the deep state, the central bank, has been building for a very long time. Now, he only has a very short period of time to do this, and everything can't be done within a year or two, when the deep state and the central banks had many, many years to do what they've done to our country. But we see there are other countries out there where they're saying, you know something, maybe we should separate ourselves from the U.S. right now, because we see that we shouldn't be dependent on their systems, on their payment systems. Now, Germany's foreign minister called for the creation of a new payment system independent of the U.S. that would allow Brussels to be independent in its financial operations from Washington. He went on to say, Europe should not allow the U.S. to act over our heads and at our expense. For that reason, it's essential that we strengthen European autonomy by establishing payment channels that are independent of the U.S., creating a European monetary fund, and building up an independent SWIFT system. And this is not the only country that is looking to do this. There are others that are looking to do this, and there are many others that have already done this. And Russia is still out there calling for many nations to use their national currencies for trade. There's no reason to use the dollar. Now, by pushing countries to do this, they would use their currencies to do pretty much everything. If they wanted to go to Libya or to Iraq or to Lebanon or to Syria to purchase oil, they wouldn't need to use US dollars, which means they don't need to keep all these dollars in their reserves. They would use their own currency to buy that oil, which then poses a problem for the United States, for the central banking system, for the petrodollar system. What that means is all those dollars that have been sitting out in all these different countries, well, they're going to head back to the United States. And everything that was supporting the dollar, the oil sales, the full faith and credit of the United States, well, that is going to completely fall apart. Because once all those dollars come back to the U.S., we have this debt problem, we have inflation, and everything can't be sustained, because what is happening here is we don't have the working base anymore to pay for the amount of debt and the amount of principal. It's completely impossible. It's mathematically impossible. And we can see once this starts to happen, it is completely game over. And it won't take that much time, because once one country starts to do it, another country joins on. Think about when the petrodollar system came about. All of a sudden, in the 70s, we came off the gold standard. They set up the petrodollar system in the Middle East. And yes, it was a couple of years, but think how quickly countries latched onto this. It won't take them that long to get off of it and use their own currencies, especially when those countries out in the Middle East aren't forced to accept only the dollar. Remember what's happening here. That forceful organization called the deep state, they will not force these countries anymore to accept only the dollar. These countries, they'll be able to accept anything they want. That means the central bank, the deep state system, implodes. This is the plan. This has always been the plan. Except the deep state, they've run the country for a very long time. Now, everything is being switched. The deep state, they're being hunted, forced out, and eventually, a lot of these individuals will be put into jail. The system that funded the deep state is going to be dismantled. It's going to be taken over. And we're watching it happen in real time. That is what is happening right now. And you can't do everything all at once. It's not going to be like, oh, let me throw a switch and everything just happens. It's one piece at a time. But eventually what's going to happen, it's all going to come together. And people are going to look back and say, wow, look what happened. Just like when we came off the gold standard, no one really knew what was going on back then. Yeah, now you look back and you say, oh, now it's clear as day. You can see what they were doing. But back then, many of the people believed it because all you had was the corporate media. You believe what they were telling you. You believe what the president was telling you, and you went along with it. Now you look back and you say, whoa, I see what they were doing. I understand it now. The same thing is happening right now, but in the opposite way. The deep state is no longer in power. So we're going to be going through this transition, and you need to be ready and prepared for it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.